The current year is 2019, and to say that we are knee-deep in the information age would be an understatement, to say the least. And a cursory glance at the internet these days will instantly relay to you the message that there's some product, some idea, or some lifestyle that is allegedly best for you, and not just for you, but for everybody. And there's a constant danger of information overload, and more importantly, there's a constant danger of confusion. Everywhere you look, someone, somewhere on the internet, is trying to sell you his product, his idea, or maybe even his way of life. Sometimes with benign intentions, sometimes for less than benign reasons. And in this information overload and obscurity, it is very difficult to see past the hype. Because one thing that becomes inevitable in all of it is that the overhype can get to anyone. And you can be oversold on just about anything, from ideas to lifestyles or actual products. The internet produces an inflationary effect when it comes to what is being presented. That is just the way it is. Considering the possibility that you might fall into the MGTOW camp, or even if you do not, as we find ourselves in a quote-unquote new year, it might be as relevant as it has never been before to ask the question if you've been oversold something because the hype train behind it was so massive, you actually might have forgotten to ask the convenient question if the hype was ever applicable to you in the first place. And there is, of course, some real cynicism behind hype at times, because for every person who has good intentions in trying to sell you an idea or product, there are just as many with bad intentions. And even worse, there are those who have become so married to the image they project into the world that any change, read recalibration of said professed beliefs or advocacy, will simply never happen, not least of which because the people who have become enamored of what that person projects would never tolerate any deviation from the projection they first fell in love with. The truth is, everywhere we go, everywhere we look, we are under information assault, from within and from without, and we are told to follow directives that may or may not be applicable to us as individuals. And whilst it might be nice to speak of abstractions, it would be far better to speak in concrete terms, to at least name a few specific examples of just what I'm talking about here. So let's take one everyone's familiar with. When I was much younger, there was, as if by fiat decree, the doctrine that each and every person must attend university, and that a university education was absolutely essential to securing employment. Of course, the details of this mysterious transfiguration from education to employment were never well fleshed out, but it sounded something like this. Quote unquote, being broadly educated, being able to think critically, will allow you to perform any job well. And yet, fast forward decades later, and the reality of the world is, more often than not, employment does not really require any education or critical thinking, just the very specific skill set related to the job you are supposed to perform. If you're a coder, you don't need to know anything about classical music, history, literature, language, science, nutrition, or anything else for that matter. You just need to be able to code. But of course, at the time, some 3 or so decades ago, few foresaw the coming of pure specialization as the primary means forward, at least in terms of employment. I'm not, for the record, discounting education for other purposes. Of course, they will tell you that a university education is still essential and important, but the reality of the job market belies that very claim, and thus, if you are a young person, you're left with a choice of whether or not you should attend university. If you seek to become an astrophysicist, there's likely no way around several university degrees. But if all you seek is reliable and gainful employment, then plumbing or carpentry might be a better path. And should you still seek knowledge and education outside of your narrow occupation, the internet offers ample opportunity to do so. But university education is a pretty minor battlefield in the vast realm of those who seek to claim your wallet, souls, and lives. Above all, online, there are feuds and veritable wars being fought over some very important topics, other times less so. So let's take the topic of nutrition. Although there are probably more controversial or heated topics, you would in fact be hard-pressed to find many that create the same level of doctrinaire dogmatism and obsession. Wherever you look, you will find adherence to specific nutrition plans of a likeness to religious fanatics. Take your pick. In one corner, you have keto. Then an even more extreme version of that, which is carnivore, just as an example. At the opposite end of the spectrum, you have veganism, with its own variants and even more broadly low carb, and everything in between. Each and every one of these nutritional advocates will insist to you that their nutritional plan is not only optimal for them as individuals, but for you and the entirety of humanity. Whether they are sincere about this is questionable, though some undoubtedly truly believe that, and others just want you to buy what they say. But regardless, they all want you on their team. Now, I can tell you that there is likely no silver bullet when it comes to nutrition, and that there exists a multitude of factors, personal genetics, ancestry, and environment, that will all dictate what might be the quote-unquote best nutrition for you. But I can assure you, none of those people preaching their religion will tell you that. Optimal nutrition is likely a chimera, at least in the current age, and will be for some time to come. But approximating it will take years of experimentation, failure, and learning what works for you. And whilst there are certainly universals, some at least, different people will experience food in different ways, and it is a messy process getting to know your body. The only way to find any of this out is through experimentation and being open enough to test new things, something that religious preachers of all stripes do not want you to do, because it may lead to you leaving behind the dogma they seek to impress upon you. And then there's MGTOW, which is, inasmuch as broader society is concerned, highly deviant. But MGTOW itself is a reflection of what one does as a man when most of the information being sold to you does not add up, does not compute, and fails to deliver on the goods promise. That does not mean, though, that each and every man in the world can or should go MGTOW, but rather that the value of it, or the key insight of it, is that it is always important to take a broad inventory of forces at work to see whether or not they are compatible with you. Not society, not the world, you. And this is the real challenge behind so much of life's struggles, because you can say, for instance, reject traditional trappings and go your own way, but nonetheless become a rigid religious fanatic on some other front. The truth is that life demands constant revision of what we believe. Not to achieve the optimum, since by definition the optimum is unachievable, but to approximate it as closely as possible for you. And on that personal journey, there will be many, many fuck-ups, I can assure you. You will hurt yourself, fall ill, make potentially catastrophic decisions. And all of that ultimately serves as fuel for going forward in a better, more enlightened way. Not a perfect way, an improved way. Think, reflect, change, and question. These are the only things that can be done in the current information overload era we live in. We are bound to fuck up, but the trick is to fuck up less over time. And though that might sound inglorious, it is pretty much as good as it gets. Something to note is that none of us living today will likely see a silver bullet for all of our troubles, be it health, wealth, nutrition, technology, whatever it might be, which is why the desire to stay in a comfort zone actually ends up achieving the opposite effect more often than not, because rigidity is a limiting factor and can actually make you less than comfortable long term. And it is kind of strange. Few people need to be sold or oversold on what their favorite video game is. After all, neither Activision nor EA are after the hearts and minds of their customers. For the most part, they're content with people partying with their wallet's content. Not so much the people fighting for the hearts and minds of some grander battlefield, the lifestyle you're supposed to follow, the diet plan, the investment plan. But here's the thing. Dogmatic obsession is actually a bit like a drug addiction. The fix feels good, but it only lasts a comparatively short time, and then you need a new fix. But if you cling to the old, despite having doubts or for fear of losing yourself, the fix will get weaker and weaker until nothing is left, at which point you may move on to something else. But why not just continually test everything you've attached yourself to make sure it works for you in the way it is being sold to you? If not, just move on. Life is far, far too short to find the silver bullet that will take down the beast of life's problems. Far better to live with uncertainty, question, and remain open to possibilities, even things you've never considered before, as unorthodox as they might seem at times. That, at the end of the day, is the broader application of going your own way, on every possible front life has to offer. As it is my obligation to keep you informed, as of the making of this particular video, YouTube seems to have remonetized my channel. Now, I've not received any money, and many videos are still not monetized, but technically some ads seem to be running. However, this is essentially insignificant, since A, YouTube and Google have proven themselves to be unreliable, and B, it might never be possible to achieve the same levels of AdSense revenue, which were not much to begin with, if I'm perfectly honest. Given this, subscriber support remains a necessity, and I am very grateful and appreciative to all who have contributed and continue to support the channel. As always, may the gods watch over you, and you enjoy your weekend. Bye-bye. If you liked this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you enjoy my content, please consider making a donation or becoming a patron. Thanks for watching.